Tale of Two Cities is a really hard book to read, but the ending made it 1,000 times better, and it just made the book one of my favorite classics ever. Hello everyone, my name is Michelle, and this is my channel Coffee Love and Books, and today I'm going to be doing my second installment into my deep dive literature series, and I'm talking about the last chapter / final scene of Tale of Two Cities. It's amazing. It's probably one of my favorite literature endings ever, and today I'm going to be chatting about why. Okay, so let's jump right in. And if I'm looking down a lot, it's because I wrote everything in my journal right here. So we're going to start on this fabulous chapter entitled The Footsteps Die Out Forever. So when I first read this book with 10th grade English class, I was told to look out for the footsteps motif, and I think that also kind of ties in with a lot of the sounds, but specifically footsteps. And basically, oh wait, sorry, spoiler warning on this video. If you haven't read Tale of Two Cities and you do not want to be spoiled for the ending, this is the last chapter and will spoil everything. So read the book first, or if you don't care, just watch this video. Okay, so I love that title because it kind of ties into the motif of footsteps throughout the entire book so far, and it kind of has this sense of finality. So we start out, and it's kind of confusing because we're just coming out of a chapter about, what even is her name? Oh yeah, it was Miss Pross, where she like kind of defeats the bad guy. And that's one of my favorite themes in this story, is that the heroes of her story are the people who you would have, they're kind of like, I don't know, like they're depicted really badly at first, and then they're the ones who care enough about our main characters to save them. Miss Pross, she kind of cares about Lucy because of Lucy's kind of more superficial traits, but then you realize that she actually like really loves Lucy, and even though at the beginning she's like kind of living vicariously through Lucy, you see that she would do anything to protect her. And that's not what this chapter is about, but it's coming from a very, very in-depth, close to the character moment, which isn't like a very Dickens thing from what I've seen so far. Dickens likes to be out in his authorial bubble, like, I am above this and I'm gonna inject things into my story, which one of my favorite themes throughout this chapter, but that's just kind of the context. Sydney Carton is about to die. He's going to the guillotine with a bunch of other people. He has just exchanged himself for Darnay. Is that, if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, I'm really sorry. But anyway, Carton is about to die for Darnay, and we're expecting, okay, like we just zoomed out, like this is the, okay, let's go into Carton's head because he just did this amazing thing and we want to know his thoughts before he dies. And Dickens doesn't do that. So he starts out in this very zoomed out position. And one of the first things he mentions is a sound, and he hits all the senses here. He's talking about the Paris streets, the death carts, everyone going to the guillotine, and then he comes back to his perspective, Dickens' perspective, Dickens' involvement in his own story. He talks about all these different plans and then says, more certain than those that have produced this horror, crush humanity out of shape once more under similar hammers, and it will twist itself into the same tortured forms. So he just is kind of making this appeal, change back again what they were, the powerful enchanter time, that they shall be seen as the carriages of absolute monarchs, the equipages of feudal nobles, and the toilets of flaring Jezebels, the churches that are not my father's house, but the den of thieves, and the huts of millions of starving peasants. He's begging God and time and Mother Nature, whatever authority, our author, he's begging these powers of nature and of the universe to change this back. He says, even like bringing back the French aristocracy, the French monarchy, this oppressive rule, peasants starving. He's like, that is better than this. And that's up for debate. I think everyone kind of agrees that the French Revolution was awful. It resulted in a lot of horrible, unnecessary bloodshed. But this whole, he's just like, anything is better than this. And that is such a strange position to see coming from an author, the one who's in control of this story and killing off our beloved characters. Sorry. Dickens, why'd you do this? He then says more and more about like appealing to God, and he says, changeless and hopeless the tumbrils roll along. He is building up dread. There's no possible way to save our beloved main characters. It's just, it's really sad. He uses this slow zoom out and zoom in to build the tension in the audience, to make us feel the dread of approaching death and realize that it's unstoppable, to feel like our characters feel. We're completely helpless in this, and the author comes to the position that he is also completely helpless in stopping this. And I think that's definitely a callback to the French Revolution and how people felt then. There's no possible way to stop this force, to stop this anger, to stop this hate. And it's really heartbreaking. Like, I love how Dickens, even though this moment is supposed to be super tense and kind of high-paced and just crazy, he slows it down and he takes it beat by beat. These are what they're hearing. This is how it's unstoppable. This is why it's unstoppable. And he kind of takes this step back. He kind of is annotating in his own book a little bit. He's explaining the attitudes. And he does this a lot, but it's especially prevalent in this moment where he's like, hey, yo, I'm the author, but I don't have any control over how this turns out either. Which, like, obviously he does, but he takes the position where, no, and I couldn't. I guess I'll go back to Dickens' history a little bit. He was in a workhouse from like, age 10. He had to earn income for his family. He was completely on his own. And I think his attitude towards the oppression of people was, they can't stop this. Like, there's nothing people can do. And that's strange coming from him, because his whole point in writing was to bring the attention of the wealthy to the oppression of the poor. And he did it in amazingly, just beautifully smart ways, by making like, oh, Oliver Twist is actually the son of like a noble, but like he's also like in this super poor situation. Look, imagine if you were in his shoes. And it's just so smart. And he does the same thing with Sydney Carton. He's like, imagine if you, a noble, were completely helpless to any kind of stopping of your own inevitable death. Wow, Dickens. That's a real light conversation piece. But it makes this chapter amazingly just wise, and I love it. Okay. The next thing he does is kind of build up the monotonous going on. How many times people have died. He explains the reactions of the people who live around it, who have seen this so many times and just know they can't stop it. It's just inevitable. Inevitable death. That's a theme in this entire passage. But inevitable early and horrible death is also kind of the switch he does on it. Alright, so I'm going to read this next passage. Of the riders in the tumbrils, some observe these things, and others on the roadside with impassive stare. So he's now talking about the riders, the people who are being executed. He describes their reactions, and others with lingering interest in the way of life and men. Some seated with drooping heads and sunk in silent despair. Again, there are some so heedful of their looks that they cast upon the multitude such glances that they have seen in theaters and in pictures. Several close their eyes and think, or try to get their straying thoughts together. Only one, and I really thought he was going to talk about Sydney Carton at this point, but he just twisted it on us, and he, a miserable creature of crazed aspect, is so shattered and made drunk by the horror that he sings and tries to dance. Yeah, all of these are realistic reactions. And then they say that no one even tries to get the crowd to spare them. They know they won't. They know that they're so eaten up by anger at the monarchy and the aristocracy that no one's going to stop this, even if it's unjust. Which, again, helplessness in the face of death. The leading curiosity, and now we get to Carton, but it's not even in Carton's perspective. It's an outsider's perspective of Carton, the author's perspective of Sydney Carton, and that's crazy. Why can't we just be in Carton's head? But we're not until a little bit later. The leading curiosity is to know which is he who stands at the back of the tumbril with his head bent down to converse with a mere girl who sits on the side of the cart and holds his hand. He has no curiosity or care for the scene about him and always speaks to the girl. Okay, so, Sydney Carton is a guy who's very selfish at the beginning of this book. Even though he kind of loathes himself, he's still so focused on himself and how badly he's done. He's a drunkard. He kind of is depicted in this awful light, and now we see that in his dying moments he is completely and utterly focused on this girl, and it's just beautiful. I love this friendship these two strike up right before they both die, but it just is a beautiful way of Dickens kind of zooming into these stories and looking at their hearts and looking at how this poverty has affected them. And it's just amazing. And then we hit on a spy. I'm not sure who this is. I'm sure it's explained somewhere. But anyway, the spy, I'm pretty sure, is one of our main characters in the story. It's just not said outright. And he's like telling this guy, hey, dude, he's gonna pay for what you don't have to yell at him or anything. And I'm pretty sure that's just one of our main characters who's looking on. And we see that people hate Darnay, who Sydney is dying for, that they hate him, and just because he's from aristocratic roots, and you see the hatred and you see the anger and you're like, oh, this is so sad. And we go to the antagonists and they're like, hey, where's Madame Defarge? What happened to her? And you kind of get this moment of satisfaction where like, oh, she's dead. She was super evil. But that's our little moment of victory where like our villains don't get, or our main villain, I guess, doesn't get to see the fruit of her works, which didn't even succeed. So like there's this strange thread of like happiness, not really happiness, but like optimism and joy throughout this, where our villains didn't win. And I think this is such a good ending, guys. It's like, yes, we get that taste of victory, but it's also this really sad moment where we're losing a character we've come to love so much, and it just hurts. It hurts, okay? Then our author, who is also feeling this joy over the fact that our villains like kind of sort of maybe lost, and he's like, I, louder vengeance, much louder, and still she will scarcely hear thee. Louder yet. Dickens, okay, he's like me when I'm annotating a book. He's like so into the story and like, yeah, go on, yell for her. She's not coming back. Yeah. I just love Dickens. He's amazing. He's just like, oh yeah, it seems like he wrote this scene and then he was like, ooh, what if I were in this scene? And I like kind of was like, this character that I am, and then I like wrote down like, yeah, you do that, no, that's stupid, okay. It's just amazing. I love his little injections into this story. We see how little our villains care about the fact that people are dying, and we get to the numbers, which is, oh my gosh, so tense. The counting, the beats, so our first character, this is a really hard, oh my gosh, this sentence. who scarcely lifted their eyes to look at it a moment ago when it could think, speak, and count. That's describing the first victim, the first one who lost their head to the guillotine. And they're like, yeah, whatever, this person's dead now. They're only paying attention when the characters are dead, if that makes sense. And then we get our one. So, first guy is dead. The second carriage is emptied. The third comes up, crash. So the numbers are building the tension more quickly now. So we had the slow zoom out, zoom into Carton from everyone around him. And then we're getting the 1, 2. And it's just this inevitable death coming forward. And then we get to their carriage, and the supposed Evermondi descends, and the seamstress is lifted out after him. He has not relinquished her patient hand in getting out, but still holds it as he promised. He gently places her with her back to the crashing engine that constantly whirs up and falls, and she looks into his face and thanks him. I love just how selfless he is, how much he's focused on her. This is a big character arc for him. He went from selfish / self-loathing to selfless and focused on another girl focused on this girl right before he dies, and it's just beautiful. A theme I see in this is his death is the antithesis to his life. And obviously we see his character arc, how he slowly grows to care more and more about people. And you also see that selflessness earlier when he puts himself on the line by using the defense that since he and Darnay look the same, it could have been either of them who or it could have been anyone who was the traitor, because if they look the same, other people could look the same. But that puts him at risk. He's now kind of a suspect, and you just see that same selflessness now playing out here. They keep talking, Sydney Carton and this girl who is not named. She says, there's a lot of really heavy Christian themes in this, just talking about how they're about to go to heaven. Oh, we're soon going to be there. I think you were sent to me by heaven. And then Sydney Carton says, or you to me. Keep your eyes upon me, dear child, and mind no other object. Love him. And then the two stand there in the fast thinning throng of victims, but they speak as though they were alone, eye to eye, voice to voice, hand to hand, heart to heart. These two children of the universal mother, else so wide apart and differing, have come together on the dark highway to repair home together and rest in her bosom. This beautiful language, just, I don't even have anything to say. It's just so darn beautiful. Then they keep talking. He keeps comforting her about different questions she had. And this girl is an absolute angel. It's not really about her, but oh my golly, she literally says, well, if the Republic is going to do good for the people, then my cousin will live a long, good life. I'm like, the same people who are killing her. She's like, well, it'll mean my cousin lives a long time. And then she's scared. Oh, this girl is a gem. I love her so much. And then they keep talking until you comfort me so much. I'm so ignorant. Am I to kiss you now? Is the moment come? And I love how the only really injection into Sydney Carton's character in this moment is just his short answer responses. He's literally just like, yes. And then they say goodbye and they solemnly bless each other. The spare hand does not tremble as he releases it. Nothing worse than a sweet, bright constancy in the patient face, and she goes before him, is gone. The knitting woman count 22. The girl is gone, who we'd met just moments before, but have already fallen in love with. It's kind of this sad moment of this sweet life being cut off early, and they say goodbye, and now we're finally in Carton's head. So And the first thing we hear is, I am the resurrection and the life, saith the Lord. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whatsoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. And I just love, it's like Sydney's saying this verse to himself as he's going up to die. And it's beautiful. There's a lot about redemption and resurrection in this passage as they're slowly approaching death, but the belief that they are going to live again. And it's just so beautiful. I just love that that's the first thing we see when we get into Sydney Carton's head. And then, this is beautiful. I love Dickens. The murmuring of many voices, the upturning of many faces, and the pressing of many footsteps in the outskirts of the crowd, so that it swells forward in a mass like one great heave of water, all flashes away. 23. The numbers bring us full circle to the death of one of the main characters, the most influential character in this story, the one we've been rooting for, and he's gone. But we see him just completely changed, completely at peace. And then they go on to talk about how his face is peaceful and prophetic in death. And that's a typical Victorian, this is around the Dickensian time, but there was this common thread I've seen a lot in the literature from around that time. There was a lot of stress put on having a peaceful, beautiful face when you died. This is likely because of tuberculosis and / consumption. It was thought to be the beautiful disease, basically. If you had it, especially if you're a woman, it was more like, oh, you die, but you're also like beautiful in death. And you see this in Anne of Green Gables, a character there, no spoilers, a character there dies from consumption, and they say, oh, her face is so beautiful and peaceful in death. You see similar themes where it's almost like, oh, they were peaceful as they died, they were beautiful as they died, and it's often somewhat of a redemptive look at their death. Like, even though they weren't that great in life, in death, they are finally at peace and finally who they should be, which is a little bit morbid when you think about it, but it was a common theme in literature at that time. Then we get to Sydney Carton's last words, which, why didn't you put this in his final moments, Dickens? But no, Dickens first kills off Carton, and then he does Carton, what Carton would have said. I, the benevolent author, finally have Carton's last words. So he didn't actually say this, but this is also kind of a prophecy of what's going to happen. It's kind of like the epilogue of the story, where Carton is just kind of I don't know how to describe it. He uses Carton's last words. It's kind of like also, this is also what happened to our other main characters. You'll get it when I read it. I see a beautiful city and brilliant people rising from the abyss in their struggles to be truly free. In their triumphs and defeats through long, long years to come, I see the evil of this time and the previous time, of which this is the natural birth, gradually making expansion for itself and wearing out. So beautiful. I feel like this is also Dickens' kind of, I don't know, his kind of dream and his philosophy. He was so focused on bringing attention to the struggles of the poor, and I just think that's a beautiful vision for any generation, any time, but specifically one as depraved and sad as this one. And then this is Carton. I see the lives for which I lay down my life, peaceful, useful, prosperous, and happy, in that England which I shall see no more. I see her with a child at her bosom who bears my name. I see that I hold sanctuary in their hearts and the hearts of their descendants. Generations hence, I see her, an old woman, weeping for me on the anniversary of this day. I see her and her husband, their course done, living side by side in their last earthly bed. I know that each was not more honored and held sacred by the other soul than I was in the souls of them both. Sorry. That's like kind of, I don't know, that's kind of funny to me. He's like, yeah, they both love me more than each other, or as much as each other. Which I get that makes sense, but it's also kind of funny that Sydney Carton thought that. I don't know. I see that child who lay upon her bosom. This is my favorite part. This is the big redemption theme that I was talking about earlier. I see that child who lay upon her bosom and who bore my name, a man winning his way up in that path of life which was once mine. I see him winning it so well that my name is made illustrious there by the light of his. I see the lots that I threw upon it faded away. Oh my goodness. I love that so much. I love that he's seeing, I'm sure this actually is supposed to happen in this story where this does end up happening, but like, I love that Carton, he looks at his life, and even as wrong as this probably was, he saw the opportunity to do something good with his life and he took it, and I guess that was the right decision, but he also didn't really get to bring honor back to his name. He died in a very, no one's really gonna know quite what he did except Darnay and Lucy and their children. And I think the amount he cares about honor being brought back to the name, I guess Sydney Carton, whatever, is really beautiful. He didn't get to redeem himself in his eyes, but he thinks that this child can at least redeem his name. And it's so sad because he did redeem, like he did so many amazing things, but he wants to be recognized. He wants the honor and goodness to be brought back to his name, not just him, a drunkard. He doesn't really see this final act as redeeming what he did in his life, and that's so sad. But also you see the peace that is brought by the realization that one day a kid is gonna bring back honor to his name. The last words of this book. It is a far, far better thing I do than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest I go to than I have ever known. It's such a happy, sad ending, and I don't know. Dickens. I don't even know how to reflect on that well. It's just beautiful language describing a beautiful story about a beautiful redemption, about a beautiful dream for the future. All in the midst of this horrible, horrifying, sad, monotonous, depressing circumstance. And yet there's hope at the end. And we know, even like past Dickensian times when like there was no more French Revolution and France was a lot better off, even past then, we know that the world did in certain ways get better, and that's beautiful. That's just amazing. I know it's just a story, but I think the connection it has to Dickens and his time and his dreams, it just make it so real feeling, and also to know how many people actually suffered through the French Revolution is heartbreaking, and this brings a face to that struggle. Many stories have done this where they have brought faces and people to the sad circumstance, the sad, depressing, awful time of the French Revolution. And I think, I don't know what could have done it better than this. This book is so worth the read just for the ending. It's hard to get through at first. I barely read it at first. I kind of skimmed. I couldn't understand it. But my golly, once you get connected to these beautiful, fantastic, amazing characters, I can absolutely guarantee you that you will fall in love with this book. Possibly. This book is amazing. The ending is amazing. And I just read it. Okay? Alrighty guys, so thank you so much for watching this video. I absolutely adore this book. I really hope you read it, or you find a copy and at least read this final chapter, because there's so much more to be reaped from it than I brought up today. And I hope that it's an amazing book. I'm glad I got to fangirl over it today. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you liked this content and want to see more of it. I will be coming out with more videos about deep dives into small videos on literature, small moments in literature, and just giving them the praise and glory they deserve. And I will see you guys next Saturday. Thanks for watching. Bye!